You have.
No,
right?
I
So
haven't.
No, stop. You don't know anything about these January 6 cases. You don't know why these people are in jail. You don't know that a man is in Brooklyn right now for 3 years without charge or trial. And when Donald Trump says these people have been held for too long, you say, no, Trump is wrong. Keep them locked up. That's fucking fascist. Dude, you've been sitting here with no knowledge of the specifics of some of these cases. There is a man in Brooklyn right now. I'm going to say it again. No charges whatsoever brought. And he's been in jail for 3 fucking years. For you to sit there and say it is good that he remains locked up is fascism.
This might just be Tim Pool's most epic takedown of a liberal over January 6th that I've ever seen. Let's watch it.
That is saying the hierarchical system of the courts and the government is just, and the process is all that matters. And I am saying perhaps 3 years is enough, because I actually have moral logic and an understanding of these cases. Hence, my position on January 6th has always been the people who have attacked police must go to prison. But 3 years is a fucking long time for assault on an officer. We have seen people on the far left, notably when they were firebombing shit all across Minnesota, 33 people murdered. And how many criminal charges did we get for this? When they firebombed a police station and forced the police to evacuate. On May 29th, 2020, when thousands of far leftists firebombed the White House grounds and set fire to St. John's Church and injured 100 police officers, how many fucking people went to prison for 3 years? How many of them who never showed up on that day are in prison for 20 years? Enrique Tarrio wasn't even in D.C. on January 6th. And you are saying that man his only crime was, quote, don't leave. That's his only crime. You think he should be in prison for 20 years because you're a fascist. You don't care what the facts are. You don't care if this is unjust. You only care that the machine state has decreed you are not to be locked up. And this is the problem I have with the left. They don't know the facts. They don't care about the facts. They view morality as a blanket government stroke of the pen. And every person, regardless of their crime, should be in prison for decades. I reject it outright. The people who fought cops should go to prison. They did. It's been 3 years. But when you've got people who are on misdemeanor charges for having walked into a building at 4 p.m. after the riot, and I know some of these people, they walked into a building for 2 minutes and walked out, and they got 18 months for that. I don't see you defending the innocent people who walked onto a public grass at a public building after a riot had been completed. You don't know. You don't care. You've taken a tribal position and people are suffering because of it. Now you say that Donald Trump saying the injustice that we've seen warrants commutation or pardons. You say that means he's advocating for violence. This is the ultimate problem. Then you cite a press release from Maryland saying, but the right's more violent. There is a distinction between a white supremacist as a right-wing group and a run-of-the-mill Christian conservative who showed up on that day not to protest. Let's talk about Brandon Strzok. He never went in the building. He was on the other side of the building. There was a permitted protest. He walked up the stairs and he was yelling. They put this guy in prison.
You know, it's crazy how the left just blindly trusts whatever the media and government tell them without actually looking at the facts. Tim's laying it all out. People who barely did anything on January 6th are getting years in prison, while actual violent rioters from 2020 got off easy. How does that make any sense? Justice isn't supposed to be political, but that's exactly what's happening here. It's not about fairness, it's about punishing the wrong people while protecting their own.
There is Owen Schroyer, who was at a permitted rally, who was yelling death to communists. They put him in prison and specifically cited his speech. My dude, you don't know what you're talking about. And it's fine. I get it. We try to be polite. We try to be nice. But there are so many young liberals who sit here and say, the corporate press told me that these people are bad and the machine state government has decreed it by pen. So I don't care what crime they committed. I don't care what the jury said. I don't care who was on the jury. Enrique Tarrio, who was not there, should be in prison for 2 decades. Tell me this now. Why is Enrique Tarrio in prison?
Yeah, so they uncovered with him his plot to overthrow the government.
Enrique Tarrio?
Yeah, and his organization.
What plot? Who's they? Give me some
prosecutors.
Give me some fucking data. Stop squinting at me and saying the prosecutors did a thing. You didn't know. You didn't read it. You didn't read the court papers. All you know is the fascist machine state told you he should be in prison, and you're saying yes to them. Tell me why. Give me the data.
I understand that laws on the books have been there for a long time that I agree with, that if it's proven that you had a plan and you wanted to act on it, and then days after.
What's the proof?
The proof is
say the proof.
By prosecutors.
Say it.
Communications between
what communications? What did he say? What did he do?
Is this serious?
Are you going to tell me why you think Enrique Tarrio should be in prison for 20 years, or are you going to say the government decreed it?
I just explained to you.
So the government said so. Is that it?
It's usually law enforcement, which I guess is part of the government.
Government said so?
Yep.
So
Law
you can't
enforcement
say why.
that uncovers evidence of communications, a memo that he crafted and sent to his organization.
Saying what?
That detailed each institution of government that they were going to try to overthrow. Then just days later, his organization is at the Capitol.
I don't think we can even pull up Enrique Tarrio.
I'm not quite sure that there's any evidence of that sort.
Yeah. You know what? I'll say this. The idea that Enrique Tarrio crafted a memo
Malicious
outlining
conspiracy, okay.
or they 3 months featured witness evidence issued at Tarrio and co-defense included videos, thousands of messages and encrypted chat groups, as well as a public message on Parler. On or before January 6th, Tarrio convened a Ministry of Self-Defense to coordinate Proud Boys leadership on January 6th. The chat showed that Tarrio, stationed in Baltimore, encouraged the Proud Boys as they attacked the Capitol. Let's figure out what that encouragement was. Are they going to actually say in the article? So here's a citation. Proud Boy and 3 other members of the far-right groups were convicted Thursday in a plot to attack the Capitol. A jury in Washington, D.C. found Tarrio and 3 lieutenants guilty of seditious conspiracy after hearing dozens of witnesses. Jurors cleared a 5th defendant, Dominic Pizzola, on a citizen charge in a significant milestone of the Justice Department, which is now secured a conspiracy, blah, blah, blah. They will never stop. Okay, that's interesting. Wikipedia asserts that they did this, but there's actually nothing in the news article that actually states that is true. Well, now we got a problem. Let's try this again. Let's try a secondary source. Let's see. There it is. They introduced evidence that Tarrio discussed with associates a plan to have a large crowd in Washington storm government buildings in a scheme they called 1776 Returns, in which the Winter Palace was used as an apparent code for the U.S. Capitol. In a message, he said, make no mistake, we did this, do what must be done, and he directed the Proud Boys to do it again. So the question then becomes, in the bigger picture...
So are you going to at all acknowledge that you just blew up over something that I was absolutely citing fairly?
I don't think you cited it fairly.
I think people should be prosecuted for engaging in plans to overthrow a government. That's kind of
that's a very loose definition of plans to overthrow the government.
Y'all don't seem to be that informed.
Wait, look, respectfully, I cover a lot of protests and riots. A lot of people try to protest and riot and occupy government buildings. Do you think that qualifies as trying to, overthrow your government?
No.
Okay, good. So,
Yeah.
I mean...
but if they had a plan to take control of the government, which was this one.
If this was an actual plan, this was the leastly
That's a
poorly,
plan to take
most
over the government?
ridiculous plan ever. They went after people for having Lego sets of the Capitol. I mean, the level of political prosecution here, would you even admit that there was some level of politics when it came to the prosecution of the J6ers? Would you say politics played a role in this?
Engaging with this as thoughtfully as possible, not trying to grandstand. Of course, often for very justifiable reasons, prosecutors will try to make an example of someone who, for example, tried to overthrow the government to prevent the peaceful transfer of power. I see why such a thing,
personally, I reject
categorized as sedition,
overthrow the government,
would be uniquely bad to prosecutors and political in that this all involved politics, right? And thus,
I'm sorry, I have to say this.
Sent.
The Wikipedia article making those claims is not citing any actual proof that they said those things.
Tim Pool absolutely wrecked this liberal, and honestly, it needed to happen. The left keeps acting like January 6th was the worst thing to ever happen in American history, but they refuse to acknowledge what's actually going on. Tim's pointing out the insane double standards, how J6 protesters are getting years in prison for minor offenses, while violent rioters from 2020 got off with a slap on the wrist, and somehow we're supposed to believe this is about justice? Yeah, right. Tim brings up a guy who's been sitting in jail for 3 years with no charges, yet the left cheers for it like it's normal. Meanwhile, they pretend the 2020 riots, where police stations were burned down, federal buildings were attacked, and over 30 people were killed, never happened. Where's the outrage for that? Where are the multi-year sentences for those criminals? Crickets. Then there's Enrique Tarrio, who wasn't even in D.C. on January 6th, but he's sitting in prison for 20 years. For what? Saying don't leave? But yeah, we're supposed to believe this is about fairness and democracy. Give me a break. The problem with the left is exactly what Tim said. They don't care about facts, just narratives. They trust whatever the corporate media tells them without questioning it. If the government says someone is guilty, that's all they need to hear. Meanwhile, actual violent criminals from the left side get a free pass. It's selective justice, plain and simple. At the end of the day, Tim Pool exposed exactly what's going on here. The January 6th prosecutions aren't about law and order, they're about political revenge. And the left is eating it up.